Hi, I'm Priscilla, and today we're going to make olive oil soap using the cold process method and the hot process method. Okay, so to start, I have turned the crock pot on high, and it's slowly warming up, and I'm going to measure out some olive oil. Whether you use extra virgin olive oil, regular olive oil, or olive oil pomace, it's all the same. Yeah, when it comes to soap making, they all have the same properties, so it's much different than when you're cooking and you want particular flavors to come out of the olive oil. So I am going to tear this out, and I am going to measure 30 ounces of olive oil. Okay, got about 12 ounces, and I'm pouring it directly into the pot. So I'm going for 30. I'm going to do another 12. Okay. Okay, so we have 24 ounces of oil in the crock pot, and I need 6 more ounces. So here we go. Okay, going a little bit over is fine. And now I will pour in the last 6 ounces of olive oil, and this will make 30 ounces of olive oil. Now the next thing we're going to do is measure out our distilled water and our lye to make the lye water solution that is essential to soap making. So we're going to pour the water into a separate container to make it a little bit easier to measure. Okay. Okay, so we're going to pour some out. Go ahead. A little bit more. All right, good. Next, we pour out the lye. Now we're going to measure out the lye solution. So before we even begin to pour out the lye, safety is of the utmost importance. So before you get into this part, you must have on a long sleeve shirt, long pants, closed toe shoes, goggles, and gloves. Okay, so we turn this on, and I am going to look at my recipe. And so I see I need 3.9 ounces of lye. Now this whole time, the oil is still heating up in the crock pot. So I'm going to very carefully pour this out. And I got this lye on Amazon. And you know, if there are chunks or pieces as you're going about doing this, that's fine. It will dissolve in the water. It also helps if you get a lye that is made for soap making, because in those instances, they tend to have granules that are easier to dissolve in water. So I went a little bit over my 3.9, so I'm going to take out some lye. And I need to remove 0.009. So that 0.02 left of flakes to remove. Okay, 3.88. For me, that is close enough. And now I'm going to mix together the lye and the water in this separate container. So as I mentioned, this is going to cause a chemical reaction that will produce a lot of heat and some stinky smells that will dissipate. But it's important to do this outdoors or next to a window, and I am right next to a window right now. Another extremely important thing to remember is that you always pour the flakes of lye into water, and you never pour water into lye. If you do that, you will cause a fire. All right, so now I'm going to very gently mix together the lye and the water. And I am using this knife, and I am keeping my nose and my head far away as I mix this, and I do feel that it is getting warmer. Ooh, I smell it too. This lye and water solution is very hot to the touch right now. It's very hot to the touch. And the steam and the vapors have already dissipated. The steam and vapors have already dissipated, and now I am just letting the rest of the smell dissipate into the air outside, and then in a few moments we'll get to the next step. The first method we're going to work on is the cold process method, and so this produces a bar of soap that is noticeably hard, pretty smooth, and is typical of the kind of bar that you would see at a grocery store. After we mix it up and make our cold process bars, we're going to keep the soap making process going and create hot process bars that have a more rustic texture and feel to them. All right, so now with the spatula, I'm going to gently move my olive oil around in the pot. So I actually got to about 169 degrees, and my lye and water solution cooled down to 161. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix it. And here we go. Now, this is where things happen pretty quickly. So you want to keep an eye on what you're doing at all times. Don't leave the room, don't go to the bathroom, stay here. Okay, so with my spatula, I'm going to mix this around. Had I used oil that was hard at room temperature, like coconut oil, palm oil, shea butter, cocoa butter, etc., this would be a different texture. But because I use a completely liquid oil, as you see here, my batter is very, very liquidy. And it's getting thicker as I mix it, and the color is changing as well. It smells really good. It smells like olive oil. Okay, so now the fast part comes. I'm going to take my stick blender and submerge it into the oil and lye solution, and I'm going to hit the on button. So the goal here is to get what we call a trace. And trace is whenever we pick up the soap and you'll see traces of it as it falls on top of each other, indicating that it's gotten to a super thick level. Now this can take a few minutes, and because we're using 100% olive oil, like I mentioned, it's going to take a while before it thickens up, since it is oil that is liquid at room temperature. But the color is changing and it is getting thicker as we go. Okay, we're getting somewhere. It's gone from a very dark green to a lighter, more tan olivey color, and it's getting thicker. We're not quite at trace yet, so I'm going to continue blending on speed 1. Okay, all right, so I hear it, it sounds different. When I pick up the soap and drop it on, you do see some trace here. So we are at a good point to get to our next step. The main difference between cold process and hot process soap is the rate of saponification. So what I mean by that, saponification is the process of lye and water turning oils and fats into soap. And so at this stage, the lye and the water solution is still heavily present in this mixture here. So it's not fully cooked through. And so for that reason, it needs to cure for 4 to 6 weeks before it can be used. What I'm going to do is, in my container here of 12 different bars, I'm going to measure out about 100 milliliters each of 3 plain bars of soap. Okay. All right, so these are going to be some plain bars of Castile soap. And now I'm going to measure out 3 more bars, and I'm going to do some in the mold swirls with colors and fragrances. The remainder of the soap is going to be cooked with the hot process method. And so I have left the rest of the soap in this crock pot, and it's still on low. I'm going to allow this soap to cook through. All right, so it's been about 15-20 minutes, and the remainder of this hot process soap is bubbling up. So if you can see through the lid here, it's bubbling up and it's continuing the cook. This means that when we're done with this soap, all of the lye and water solution will have saponified or changed the oils that were in here into soap. So I'm gonna take the lid off. Boom. Here it is all bubbled over. It's a good time to give this remaining soap a good mix. And so from years of soap making, I can look at this and see that it is, it's on the right track. It's getting pretty close to being saponified. It's got that Vaseline petroleum jelly type of texture, so I can tell that it's getting cooked. Okay, the rest of this olive oil soap is cooked. On the sides, it's actually a little bit overcooked, but it's good to plop into my molds. So I'm going to give this a good mix, and I'm going to plop Okay, so here we have it, cold process and hot process. So this will need about 24 to 48 hours to fully harden. And then after that, I will pop them out of these silicone containers and put them on the drying rack so they can dry out. Thanks. And so now you know how to make 100% olive oil soap using 2 soap making methods.